It was a Wednesday, that hollow kind of day where nothing happens unless something really happens, and I only noticed because her side of the toothbrush holder had two brushes instead of one. Identical brands, different wear on the bristles, one standing tall and proud like a new lover marking territory. I didn't ask questions. I just stared at that arrogant little plastic neck and thought, she was supposed to be at yoga this morning. That's when I walked into the laundry room and saw a shirt. My shirt, balled up, soaked in something that didn't smell like detergent, and when I picked it up, her perfume was all over it, but I hadn't worn that shirt in months. I didn't say a word when she came home humming like someone who just got away with murder. She kissed me on the cheek and called me babe, like she hadn't been giving someone else the same treatment on my dime. I smiled, cooked her favorite dinner, poured her wine, and watched her twirl her fork and pasta like a sitcom wife, and every now and then, her phone would light up on the table with a name she always flipped over before I could see. Work stuff, she said. Always with the lie sweet enough to rot your teeth. But the lies didn't bother me anymore. What got to me was how comfortable she'd gotten doing it. She was no longer sneaking around. She was nesting in her betrayal, turning our marriage into a comfortable little grave she could decorate with selfies and new lingerie. It was in the way she started singing in the shower again, the way she suddenly started wearing that peach-colored lipstick she used to hate, and the way she laughed louder when she thought I wasn't listening. She'd changed, not into someone new, but into someone real. Her real self had crawled out of the shell of marriage and finally stretched its limbs like it had been waiting all this time for me to be stupid enough to trust her. So I played the role of the oblivious husband. I nodded in the right places. I laughed at her stories. I complimented her when she came out in dresses I knew weren't for me. And all the while, I waited. Because I knew the day was coming. She filed for divorce like she was ordering takeout. No discussion, no argument. Just one morning, she handed me papers like a waitress sliding the check across the table and said, I think we'll both be happier. I signed them with a pen I borrowed from her purse, the same purse that still smelled faintly like cologne I didn't wear. She smiled, relieved, like I'd finally accepted my defeat. And I did, at least on the surface. That's when the real work began. I kept it casual, friendly even. We split things with civility. I let her pick the apartment. I let her take the dog. Hell, I even let her think I was hurting. I wanted her comfortable. Comfortable enough to start planning her freedom party. That's what she called it. Actually, my little emancipation bash. She invited her whole tribe of enablers, the best friend who always said I was too controlling, the coworkers who lived for messy drama, the cousins who thought cheating was a cute personality quirk. They came with champagne, Instagram filters, and dresses too tight for dignity. And her sister, of course, the one person she trusted more than anyone in the world. That was the final piece. What she didn't know, what she never saw coming, was that her sister had always had one fatal flaw. She couldn't stand to be second to anyone, especially not her older, prettier, more successful sibling. And me? I gave her a throne to stand on. It started with long talks after family dinners, innocent texts about checking in, and late-night phone calls that conveniently happened when my wife was working late. I was patient. I was gentle. I was everything she wasn't, attentive, subtle, loyal, or at least, pretending to be. Her sister didn't even realize she was falling until it was too late to pull herself back up. And by the time she kissed me, truly kissed me, it was already game over. So when I walked into that divorce party, dressed like I was about to deliver a eulogy, I didn't come alone. I walked in hand with the woman who shared my last name longer than her own sister ever would. The music stopped, drinks froze mid-air, and the look on her face, that face, was the exact moment I'd been building toward. The moment the lie she built her freedom on came crashing down on top of her in front of everyone she thought would cheer her on. And as I slipped a ring onto her sister's finger and said, "Some endings deserve better beginnings," I watched my ex-wife crumble into the very silence she used to weaponize against me. I didn't need revenge. I engineered it. They say the calm before the storm is the most dangerous part, because it tricks you into thinking you're safe, and that's exactly how it felt. The first few months after we got married were almost too perfect. She'd smile in the mornings, that sleepy, content kind of smile that made you believe everything was exactly as it should be. We cooked dinner together, laughed at stupid shows, made plans for the future that felt real. I supported her every dream, from her sudden interest in photography to the boutique yoga classes that charged more per session than most people pay in rent. If she wanted to explore herself, I encouraged it. If she needed time to grow, I gave it. I believed in her, because that's what you're supposed to do when you love someone. But then, like a slow drip in a silent room, something began to shift. It was subtle at first, the way she stopped asking if I wanted coffee in the morning and just started making one cup. How she'd go to the gym and come back hours later with perfect hair and no sweat, saying she just got lost in thought. She started using words like boundaries, like love needed fences and signs and red tape. Her favorite phrase became, "I just need a little space to breathe," and when I asked what that meant, she'd tilt her head like I was some outdated piece of furniture that didn't quite fit the new aesthetic. She didn't get angry. That's what made it worse. She just smiled softer, talked less, and moved around the house like a guest who didn't want to overstay her welcome. Her phone, once left face up and buzzing like an open book, started to live in her pocket, silenced, screen always down. She changed her lock screen from a photo of us on the coast to a stock image of some random mountain. She started using AirPods even when she was just sitting in the same room, nodding to music I wasn't allowed to hear. I didn't want to be paranoid. I told myself people change. People evolve. But when she changed the password to her Instagram and said it was just for privacy, something heavy settled in my chest. I didn't say anything. I didn't accuse. I still wanted to believe that love could survive weird phases. Then came the girls' nights, which increased in frequency and lost their familiar details. I used to get cute texts from the bar, inside jokes, blurry photos, her face lit up with joy. Now it was just silence followed by vague stories the next day, names I didn't know, places that sounded rehearsed, laughter that never quite reached her eyes. One night, I found a receipt in the trash from a high-end sushi place she'd said was too pricey for dinner. It was dated for a Thursday, the same Thursday she said she'd stayed in watching documentaries. When I casually mentioned the restaurant, she blinked, paused, and said, "Oh, yeah, I forgot. I went there with Claire last week. You know how she loves spicy tuna." Claire, who was allergic to seafood. I didn't push it. I just nodded and said it sounded nice. I wanted so badly to believe her that I ignored my own memory. The next morning, I noticed her gym bag was heavier than usual, so while she was in the shower, I peeked inside. No sneakers. No towel. Just a dress, heels, and a bottle of perfume I hadn't seen before. A scent that lingered in the air hours after she left. She had become electric, energized, vibrant in ways she never was before. She started taking late-night drives to clear her head, coming home with stories about open all-night bookstores and tea shops I'd never heard of. She claimed to be reconnecting with her inner peace, but it felt more like she was disconnecting from me entirely. Her eyes stopped lingering when she looked at me. Her voice, once warm and teasing, took on this flat politeness, the way you talk to strangers you want to keep at arm's length. And yet, I still didn't accuse her. I held on, even as the pieces started to slip through my fingers. I told myself it was just a phase, a slump. I took her out to dinner, bought her flowers, even planned a weekend getaway. She smiled, said I was so thoughtful, and then spent the entire trip texting on her phone, stepping away for work calls that only came when I wasn't near. The worst part? She still told me she loved me. Every now and then, just enough to keep the hope alive. Like tossing a starving dog a scrap of meat. I didn't realize it then, but she wasn't growing, she was withdrawing. She wasn't setting boundaries, she was building walls. And I was still standing outside, too loyal, too blind, too trusting to knock them down and ask what was hiding behind them. It happened on a Sunday, the kind of day built for laziness, sunshine, and quiet reassurance. But all it took was one careless oversight to dismantle the illusion she'd spent months crafting. We were supposed to spend the day together, a plan she agreed to with her usual vacant smile and a soft, "Sure, sounds lovely," before she disappeared into the bathroom with her phone, music playing just loud enough to make it seem like she wasn't hiding. I was in the kitchen making coffee when her laptop dinged. She rarely used it anymore, too in love with her phone, but sometimes old habits slip through the cracks. A message popped up in the corner of the screen, short and sweet, no name attached, just, "Last night was perfect. I can still taste you." That was it. No dramatic flair. No nude photos. Just those 8 words, floating innocently on a muted screen, yet they hit me with the force of a sledgehammer wrapped in silk. I didn't blink. I didn't move for a full minute, just stood there, staring at those letters like they were a new language I suddenly understood. Then, without a sound, I walked to the living room, phone in hand, and did what I should have done months ago. I synced it with the laptop. Her messages were all there. Dozens of them. Not one affair, but 2. Maybe more. Conversations dripping with intimacy, full of the kind of lines I used to believe were special between us, things I thought were sacred. One man sent her playlists of songs they'd made love to. Another called her his little storm, and she responded with photos of herself in lingerie I'd never seen, taken in our bedroom, in our bed, under the same ceiling where she once promised me forever. She laughed at my name when he mentioned me. Oh, he still thinks we're in a rough patch. Poor guy. That line. That line was the kill shot. I didn't rage. I didn't scream. I just sat down, scrolled through her words, her voice in digital form, wrapped around strangers' names with the intimacy of betrayal, and I let the rot spread through my chest until the warmth of ignorance was gone. When she walked back into the room, wrapped in a towel, hair dripping and face scrubbed clean, she smiled and asked if the coffee was ready, the same mouth that had whispered filth to men she barely knew just hours ago. I looked at her like she was a stranger who had murdered my wife and was now wearing her skin. I nodded, handed her the cup, and kissed her on the forehead. Not out of love, out of control. Absolute control. That's the moment I detached. That's when the man she married died quietly and the man she never saw coming opened his eyes. I watched her sip that coffee, completely unaware that every syllable of her deception was now cataloged, backed up, time-stamped. I listened to her hum a song she said she hated just last week, probably one of his favorites. I noticed how she avoided eye contact when she spoke, how her body leaned away from mine when I passed her, how she flinched when I touched her waist. All the cracks were suddenly visible, spiderweb fractures in the glass of our life together, and I saw them all. I spent the rest of the day like a ghost, present, but not really there. She didn't notice. Of course she didn't. She thought I was still in the dark, still fooled, still playing my role as the dependable idiot too soft to see the obvious. But I saw it now. I saw everything. And I said nothing. Because the war doesn't start with a bang. It starts with silence. With cold, measured patience. With a plan. And by the time I smiled back at her and told her I loved her too, I already knew how I would end her. She thought I was sleeping when she slipped out of bed at 6:14 a.m. on a Saturday, claiming she had an early morning yoga session to realign her energy, and I played along, one eye barely open, giving her a sleepy nod before she kissed my cheek and disappeared. What she didn't know was that I'd disabled the GPS on my phone and stashed a burner inside the wheel well of her car the night before, syncing its location to my laptop. I waited 30 minutes before checking the signal. It wasn't a yoga studio. It was a residential address on the other side of the city, a place that didn't even appear on any of our shared friends' contact lists. I screenshot the location, logged the time, and went back to making breakfast like any other day. I didn't confront her when she came back 3 hours later, flushed and buzzing, dropping her map by the door and hugging me like she hadn't just spent the morning desecrating what we built. Instead, I asked her about the session. She blinked once, too long, and said, "Oh, they switched instructors. It was awful," with just enough disdain to sound believable. I nodded, poured her coffee, and made a mental note. She lies best when she's improvising. That week, I tested something new. I sent flowers to her office on a random Tuesday afternoon, a simple bouquet with no name, just a note that said, "You looked incredible last night." It was bait, of course. She texted me 3 hours later, thanking me for the surprise, even though I never claimed them. I replied, "What surprise?" And she responded instantly, "The flowers. You're being cute." That was confirmation. She hadn't been at the office that day, and she was too quick with the cover-up. I smiled at the screen, then deleted the messages. The next day, I used our joint account to check recent card transactions. I scrolled through brunches, gas stations, and rideshare charges until I noticed an odd pattern. Every Wednesday and Friday night, she used a rideshare from a shopping plaza 10 blocks from our house, always between 7:40 and 8 p.m., even on nights she swore she was home watching Netflix. She wasn't calling them from our driveway because she knew I'd hear. No, she was walking out to hide the location. Smart, but not smart enough. I hired a rideshare under a different name at the same spot on the following Friday, 10 minutes before her usual window. When I arrived, I had the driver pull over and wait. 2 cars down, there she was, hoodie up, head down, slipping into another vehicle like a shadow. I filmed the moment from behind tinted windows and told the driver to circle the block. When I got home, I was already planning the next move. I didn't just want proof. I wanted context. I needed to know who. And that's when I turned to the one person she never expected me to talk to, her so-called best friend, Erica. I knew Erica had always resented my wife's confidence, her manipulative charm. It didn't take much to play on that. A couple of drinks, a few veiled questions about how distant she'd been lately, and Erica cracked wide open. She didn't give me names, But she confirmed what I already knew. My wife had been meeting someone she swore was just a work minute, and had even bragged about how easy it was to lie when someone loves you too much to ask questions. I asked who else knew. Erica laughed and said, "She tells me everything, except who he is. That part she guards like Fort Knox." I smiled, bought her another drink, and moved on. Now that I knew Erica wasn't the accomplice, I moved to phase 3, trap questions. I started asking little things during dinner, casual, easy stuff like, "Hey, whatever happened to that Thai place you love near your office?" She'd answer too fast, too vague. Then she'd redirect, always redirect. "Oh, they closed it," or "I've been eating cleaner lately." But the receipt said otherwise. Every lie she told added another piece to the puzzle, and I wasn't even trying to fit it together, not yet. I was still gathering the corners. I created a burner account on Instagram, followed some of her more low-key friends, and found a story from a mutual acquaintance, a dimly lit video from a rooftop bar downtown. My wife was in the background, laughing, dressed up, with a man I didn't recognize, but she was holding his arm like they'd been stitched together. The timestamp matched a night she told me she was having a self-care evening with wine and candles. I downloaded the video, enhanced the lighting, and zoomed. The man had his hand on her waist, casual, territorial. The kind of touch that said this wasn't new. She was already his. And the final crack? A voicemail, one she didn't know she left. I called her phone from the landline. It went to voicemail, and 10 minutes later, I saw I had a return message. She hadn't hung up properly. The recording picked up her voice, breathy, laughing, whispering, "I can't wait to get him out of the picture, finally. He's so passive." Then the sound of a kiss. Soft, wet, final. I listened to it twice, saved it, then deleted the notification on her phone. She still didn't know. She still smiled. Still kissed me goodnight like she wasn't already married to a man planning her public execution. Every breath she took was borrowed. And I was done collecting. It was almost time to spend. I chose the venue with precision, a rooftop lounge atop a luxury hotel, the kind with quiet ambience, panoramic skyline views, and enough elegance to soften even the sharpest conversation. It was the kind of place she always said made her feel like a main character, and tonight, she would be. I told her it was a surprise dinner to celebrate new beginnings, and she came dressed like a woman expecting a proposal renewal, not a revelation. She wore the same emerald green dress she had on in the video I'd received 2 nights earlier, sent anonymously. No text, just a timestamped file showing her wrapped around a man in a parking garage, kissing him with a hunger that had long vanished from our marriage. I let her sit first, watched her unfold her napkin, cross her legs, and smile at me like she hadn't destroyed everything sacred between us. The waiter poured wine, she complimented the view, and just as she started talking about some podcast on self-healing, the screen behind her, the digital board used for subtle brand advertising, flickered. I had arranged for a brief interruption, just long enough. 10 seconds. A frozen still of the video, her face, lips locked with his, hands clawing at his chest in unmistakable heat. She didn't see it at first, but the people behind her did. Murmurs started. Phones came out. Her eyes flicked back, casual at first, then they landed on the screen and widened with a sharp intake of breath. Her body froze, hands hovering above her wine glass like it might save her from drowning. I let the silence marinate for a full 10 seconds more before the image faded. "Was that you?" I asked, voice low, calm, like I was inquiring about the wine selection. She blinked rapidly. "What? No, I don't think." She stopped herself. Her eyes searched mine, trying to gauge how much I knew. "It's not what it looked like," she said, voice brittle but composed. "It was a mistake. It wasn't even serious." She reached across the table, but I didn't move. I didn't flinch. I just looked at her and said, "You wore that same dress, that same smile. You save your best self for other men, don't you?" She pulled her hand back like she'd touched a stove. "You don't understand. We were just talking. Things got out of hand." She tried to laugh, but it came out wrong, high-pitched and shallow. "You've been so distant lately, I thought maybe you stopped caring." And there it was, the pivot, the justification, the blame. I leaned in slightly. "You thought I wouldn't notice you coming home with someone else's cologne on your skin? That I'd believe you were working late, while your mentor left hickeys under your collarbone?" Her eyes flashed. "You never made time for me. You were always in your head, always analyzing everything." I felt invisible. The same speech I'd read in message threads echoed back with less grace. "You disappeared from us before I ever stepped out," she added, crossing her arms like she'd scored a point. And now you want to make a scene? I didn't smile. I didn't break eye contact. There's no scene. Just the final act. Her face twisted, confused. What does that mean? It means, I said, you're not going home tonight. She scoffed. Is that supposed to scare me? Her voice climbed, her confidence clawing to the surface like a mask being shoved back on. You think you can control me? Intimidate me? You're pathetic. You know that? You always needed everything perfect. Your image, your rules, your little systems. And guess what? Real life isn't one of your spreadsheets. She leaned back, smug, unaware that the damage had already spread like a crack through glass. The people around us were listening now, pretending not to, forks frozen midair, eyes darting over wine glasses. Tell me something, I said quietly, when you stood in our bedroom wearing that dress, taking those pictures for him. Did you ever once feel guilty? Her mouth opened, then closed. For the first time, she had nothing. I slid a small flash drive across the table. Everything. Every message. Every video. Every lie. This is your legacy now. Her fingers trembled as she picked it up, and suddenly the color drained from her face. You can't. What is this? You can't just. I haven't done anything yet, I interrupted, my tone slicing through her panic like ice. But I will. And you won't see it coming. Her breath hitched. What do you want from me? The arrogance was gone. Only fear remained now, seeping through the cracks of her carefully maintained poise. I stood, buttoned my jacket, and dropped $100 bill on the table. Nothing, I said. You've already given me everything I need. Her mouth moved, but no sound came out. Her eyes darted around the room, scanning the faces, realizing the murmurs were about her now. I paused at the edge of the table, looking down at her like a stranger. You spent so long crafting your story, rewriting me into the villain, rehearsing your excuses. And now? You're just a cautionary tale with a pretty face and no ending. I didn't leave yet. I just stood there, letting her drown in the silence. Letting the weight of what she'd done, and what was coming, press into her like gravity itself had turned against her. The tension didn't break. It just sat there, alive, waiting, simmering, while she shrank into her seat and realized, far too late, that the game had never been hers to win. The text started that same night, one-liners at first, desperate little breadcrumbs scattered in the dark. Please talk to me. You misunderstood everything. Can we just meet? I didn't answer. She sent photos next, old ones, our anniversary dinner, us at the cabin, her in the sweater I bought her 2 winters ago, captioned, we were happy. What happened to us? I let them sit unread. Then the calls began, 12 in one night, some from blocked numbers, some from mutual friends she clearly dragged into the mess. Still, I didn't answer. The silence drove her insane. She showed up at my new apartment a week later, makeup smeared like she'd run through a storm, eyes wild, voice shaking with a cocktail of fury and desperation. You can't just ignore me, she shouted as I opened the door, not even stepping aside to let her in. After everything we've been through, you owe me a damn conversation. I looked at her like she was nothing more than a former tenant returning for a forgotten box. You want closure? I asked. She nodded, angry tears already brimming. Closure, I repeated. You mean control? That hit her like a slap. She stormed past me into the living room, pacing like a caged animal. You smothered me, she hissed. You planned every little thing. There was no room for me in your precious structure. I tilted my head slightly. You didn't want freedom. You wanted permission to betray me without consequence. She spun on her heel. I was lonely, okay. You never listened. You never really saw me. Her voice cracked. You only loved the version of me that fit your stupid image of the perfect wife. I sat down, calm as still water. No. I loved the version of you that pretended to be decent. I didn't realize that was the costume. She sneered, arms crossed tight across her chest. You were boring, she spat. Predictable. I needed someone who made me feel alive. I nodded. So you picked strangers to fill the void you created. Her mouth curled, searching for another wound to reopen. This wouldn't have happened if you were a real man. I looked her dead in the eyes. No. It happened because you're a coward who feeds on validation like a parasite. That broke her composure. She lunged forward, voice shrill. You think you're so above it all, don't you? So righteous. What, are you going to play the victim now? Pretend you didn't drive me away? I leaned forward just enough for her to feel the shift in presence. I don't need to pretend anything. You drove yourself off the edge. I just moved out of the way. She stood there shaking, hands clenched, face flushed with a mix of shame and rage. You used to love me, she whispered, the venom now gone, replaced by something far more pitiful. You used to need me. I stood up slowly. I loved who I thought you were. Not the person who laughs at loyalty and calls it weakness. She tried to reach for my arm, but I stepped back. Don't, I said flatly. Don't try to pull me back into the hell you created and then blame me for. Her voice trembled, her expression now teetering between anger and complete collapse. So what now? You just move on like I didn't matter. I walked to the door, opened it, and looked at her one final time. You mattered. Once. Then you taught me the cost of trusting someone who loves themselves more than anyone else ever could. She didn't move. Her breath was shallow, eyes darting, trying to find a crack in my armor, something she could manipulate, twist, exploit. But there was nothing left. No warmth. No hatred. Just absence. And that scared her more than anything. You'll regret this, she said quietly, the last gasp of a woman drowning in her own consequences. You'll end up alone. I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. Better alone than haunted by the ghost of someone who pretended to love me while kissing someone else. She blinked once, staggered back like she'd taken a punch to the chest, and walked out the door without another word. I closed it behind her with the same emotionless calm that had been building since the moment I saw that first message. Her chaos was finally outside of me. And now, she would live with the one thing she could never manipulate: silence. Revenge isn't rage. Rage is loud, messy, impatient. Revenge is quiet. It's a scalpel, not a hammer. So I started with the one thing she valued more than me, more than loyalty, more than her so-called freedom, her image. First, I gathered every piece of proof: the texts, the videos, the receipts, the screenshots, the audio from that accidental voicemail, every pixel of her deception cataloged, timestamped, and stored in redundant backups across encrypted drives. I kept one master file, printed and sealed in an envelope labeled for future reference, hidden in a fireproof lockbox. Then I moved to the finances. I was still listed on her credit accounts, a technical oversight she hadn't thought to fix while she was too busy lying, and so I revoked my access, closed the joint cards, froze shared lines, and transferred our emergency savings into a secure personal account in my name only, citing suspicious activity. I called the bank, explained the situation in sterile language, and had her removed from every shared asset I could reach. The car she loved driving? Still registered to me. One digital signature later, the insurance was canceled, the plates reported as inactive, and a tow truck retrieved it from her gym parking lot while she was mid-session. I didn't call her to explain. She figured it out when she walked outside and found an empty space where her little escape vehicle used to be. I kept going. Utilities? Transferred. Streaming services? Canceled. The phone plan she was on under my name? Suspended, pending investigation. I even killed the Spotify account she used to play those stupid, healing playlists, just for the poetry of it. Then I went quiet again. Gave her just enough silence to think I was retreating. That's when I made the calls. Not dramatic ones. Not shouting or sobbing. Just calm, calculated updates to people who deserve the truth. Her parents first, not with emotion, but with evidence. I sent them a curated selection of messages, one video clip, one audio file. No opinions. No accusations. Just facts. They replied an hour later, her father furious, her mother devastated. Then I moved to her boss. I waited for the quarterly review cycle to approach, then submitted an anonymous package to HR outlining employee conduct violations, attached with select screenshots proving she had used company resources, time, email, even an expense account, to coordinate her little trysts. The evidence was irrefutable, and while I made sure it couldn't be traced back to me, I also ensured they'd see the pattern: misuse, dishonesty, reputational risk. I wasn't trying to get her fired. I wanted her watched. I wanted the job she clung to like a status badge to become unstable, uncertain, just like she made our marriage. At the same time, I reached out to her closest friends, the ones who used to parrot her every excuse, the ones who called me rigid and unfun when I questioned her behavior. I sent them messages, not vindictive, not dramatic, just the same package of proof, with one sentence: I thought you should know who you've been defending. One by one, the replies came. Most were silent. A few apologized. One, the closest, confessed she'd suspected but didn't want to get involved. That one stung, but it also confirmed what I'd always known: the crowd she surrounded herself with valued comfort over truth. And then came the legal phase. I had already quietly filed for divorce under grounds of infidelity, submitted with all supporting documentation. I preemptively secured a forensic accountant to comb through our finances, ensuring anything she spent on her affairs would be attributed to her in the asset division. I included her affair partner's name in the documents, listed formally as a third party of interest. That would trigger a formal inquiry if needed. I wasn't just burning the bridge, I was pulling up the blueprints and salting the earth beneath it. When she found out, through a polite but cold call from her attorney, she called me 6 times in a row. I didn't answer. She emailed. Begged for a meeting. Let's just talk this through like adults, she wrote. I replied with one line, check your mail. She received a package that day. It included a copy of the divorce petition, a flash drive with every piece of evidence, a list of revoked assets and closed accounts, and a simple letter. No threats. No anger. Just a conclusion. This is not revenge. This is accountability. You thought you were clever. You weren't. You thought I'd never find out. I did. You thought I'd fall apart. I didn't. You thought I'd forgive. I won't. Good luck rebuilding. You'll need it. She still thought she had time. Still thought she could salvage her narrative. But I'd already stripped her of the stage, the lights, and the script. All that was left was the audience, watching, judging, remembering. It all came to a head at her sister's engagement party, an upscale, candlelit affair held at a rooftop garden downtown, with wine that cost too much and smiles that cost even more. She invited me herself, weeks ago, before she realized the storm was coming. Said it would be a clean slate, and good for appearances, thinking I'd be the same quiet fool who once believed in her lies. I accepted with a smile and offered to help her with the guest list, knowing full well that half the people on it had already received anonymous packages. I arrived first, dressed in tailored silence, shook hands, smiled politely, drank just enough to blend in, and waited. When she walked in, the crowd turned. She wore red, bold, deliberate, the color of confidence and denial. She beamed, waved, acted like nothing had changed. But something had. Everyone looked just a little too long. Some gave tight smiles, others whispered behind glasses. She noticed. The crack started then, barely visible. She tried to joke through it, saying, God, it feels like a courtroom in here, laughing too loud for the setting. But her sister didn't laugh. Her best friend didn't hug her. Her father didn't meet her eyes. She scanned the room like she was searching for an exit she didn't yet need. That changed 20 minutes later, when her sister tapped a glass to give a toast and said, before we raise our glasses, I just want to thank someone who showed us what loyalty really looks like. I knew what was coming. Everyone did. To my future brother-in-law, she said, lifting her glass in my direction. For showing me the truth when no one else had the guts to. My wife froze. Her smile shattered mid-lip. The crowd turned to me. I didn't speak. I just nodded once, calm, unreadable. Then the screen behind the dessert table lit up. It had been arranged as a slideshow for the bride and groom. But the first photo wasn't a childhood memory. It was a message. You looked incredible last night. Followed by another. He's clueless. Then a video of her, on the hotel bed, still dressed, still smiling, biting her lip and saying, you better delete this or I'm dead. She said it with a laugh, but no one was laughing now. Her hand flew to her mouth. Stop it, she said. Too late. Voice shrill, brittle. That's not. This is out of context. The screen blinked again. More screenshots. More audio. Her voice, saying things no married woman should ever say. She stepped toward the laptop, stumbling. Turn it off, she screamed. This is a sick joke. But no one moved. Not her family. Not her friends. Not even her lover, who stood near the back, face pale, already stepping away. She saw him. Her breath caught. Wait, no. You knew. You said it didn't mean anything. He turned. Walked out. That was the beginning of the end. Her mother looked away. Her sister turned her back. Her best friend pulled me into a quiet hug and whispered, I'm sorry it took us this long to see her. She collapsed into a chair, heels shaking, mascara running, eyes wild with disbelief. You set me up, she said, voice breaking. You ruined me. I stepped forward. Not to gloat. Just to witness. Just to stand there, quietly, arms at my sides, as she finally saw what she had built falling apart brick by brick. She looked up at me, something between hatred and desperation burning behind her eyes. You're just as cruel as me, she spat. You planned this. You wanted this. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. My silence was louder than anything I could have said. She stood up, tried to speak, then faltered. Her knees buckled slightly. Her voice cracked on a final, trembling, please, but no one came to her side. No one offered a hand. No one pitied her. She had spent years building a throne out of manipulation, lies, and performance. And in one night, I burned it down by simply showing them who she really was. I watched her try to collect herself, reapply that smile like a broken mask. But it wouldn't stick. The room had already decided. She wasn't a victim. She wasn't misunderstood. She was exposed. And I was still there. Still watching. Not with hate. Not with rage. Just with the calm satisfaction of a man who had nothing left to lose and nothing left to hide. That's what broke her. Not the evidence. Not the shame. But the fact that I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to punish. I just needed to reveal. And she knew then, in front of everyone, that she'd never be able to hide again. It happened 2 weeks after the slideshow. Her father was retiring, and against all odds, the family still tried to host a farewell dinner at their home, something quiet, small, for those still willing to show their faces after the scandal. I hadn't planned to go, but then her mother called me personally, voice low and brittle, and said, "Please come. You're still part of this family, no matter what she did." So I went, not to be cordial, not to be polite, but because I knew she'd be there. And she was. Sitting at the far end of the table, eyes dark, cheeks hollow, wearing a smile that looked painted on with shaking hands. Her parents greeted me with warm hugs, her sister nodded with silent gratitude, and even a few of her old friends whispered, "You deserved better," as they passed by. But her? She froze when I walked in, like she'd seen a ghost that remembered everything. The evening dragged through forced conversations and clinking glasses, until someone, a cousin, maybe, a little drunk, asked if we were trying again. She laughed, brittle and sharp. "Oh please, he just wants to play the martyr. That's his thing. Always so perfect, so morally superior. It's exhausting." A few heads turned. I didn't respond at first. I just took a sip of wine and waited. She kept going. "Let's not pretend he didn't play a role in this. You think he's innocent? He neglected me. Made me feel like an accessory in his perfect little system." I set my glass down, slow and deliberate. "So you cheated because I wasn't exciting enough?" I said, voice loud enough to silence the nearby chatter. "You blew up your life because you were bored?" She rolled her eyes, the mask cracking. "Don't twist it. You were emotionally unavailable, cold. I needed to feel something again." Her mother gasped. Her father clenched his jaw. "You felt something all right," I said, standing now. Eyes locked on her like a predator that's done circling. "You felt adrenaline sneaking around. You felt power playing 2 lives. You felt special, being someone's secret." She stood too, now trembling with rage. "You think you're some kind of victim? You were a controlling, obsessive robot. You planned everything. You drained the life out of me." I stepped closer. "I didn't control you. I trusted you. I gave you freedom, and you used it to spit on everything we built. Because you never saw me," she shrieked, voice splintering. "You were so busy being the perfect man, you forgot to be my man." The room was dead silent now. Her father tried to rise, but her mother held his hand. Her sister recorded from the corner. Someone whispered, "Get this on video." I shook my head slowly. "You mean I didn't worship your chaos? That I didn't feed the black hole of your ego every day? You wanted loyalty without accountability, a wedding ring without responsibility. You wanted a servant dressed like a husband." Her voice shook. "You're cruel." "No," I said, loud and clear. "I'm honest. For the first time in years, I'm honest. You destroyed something rare because you wanted attention. You cheated not because of who I was, but because of what you are. Shallow, entitled, addicted to validation. You needed everyone to adore you, and when I stopped giving you applause and started giving you love, you ran. Because deep down, you can't handle real intimacy, just performance." She lunged forward, eyes wild. "You think you're so noble? So righteous? You're not perfect either. You're just, she fumbled, flailing. "You're boring." The insult landed like a pebble thrown at a wall. I didn't even blink. Better boring than broken. She slapped the table, voice rising again. "You humiliated me. You made me look like a monster." Her sister stood now. "You did that yourself," she said flatly. "We just finally saw it." Her lover. Yes, he had shown up too, awkward and twitchy in the background, started to edge toward the door. "You're not leaving," she barked at him. "We're not done. We were never anything," he muttered, not even looking at her. It was fun till it wasn't. He vanished before she could speak. She turned back to me, now visibly unraveling. "You ruined my life." "No," I said with finality. "You ruined your own. I just showed them the evidence." She stood in the middle of that room, hair falling from its clip, chest heaving, surrounded by the ashes of her own lies, and everyone saw it. Her family, her friends, the people she used to impress, and all of them looked at her with something worse than judgment, disappointment. And I just buttoned my jacket, turned to her parents, and said, "Thank you for dinner," before walking out with the kind of silence that echoes louder than any scream.